Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this LASA webinar, Social Media, 10 Tips for Success. My name is Miles Mayer. I'm from LASA, and my colleague Paul Webster will be presenting with me as well. I'd just like to thank you all for joining us. A couple of public service announcements before we start. I'd just like to thank our funders, the London Councils and the Department of Health for supporting us and sort of making all these sort of webinars possible. So thank you very much. And there we are, so you have a handle on who we are. If you haven't heard of LASA before, we've been in the sector for 30 years. We provide trusted advice. We're not trying to sell anyone anything. Please check us out at lasa.org.uk. And we have a bunch of other sort of websites that are well worth checking out. You may find something useful there. Also, please check out Welfare Rights at rightsnet.org.uk. If you provide information, advice and guidance to the public, RightsNet is a really good resource. So that's us, that's LASA. I know we're all sort of keen to get on with this. A couple of webinar tips just to help us through this. There are two ways of taking part in the webinar this afternoon. Number one is to raise your virtual hand, and if you look at the control panel on the right hand side of your screen, just at the top left hand side there, you can see a yellow hand which you can sort of raise or lower, and that sort of tells us if you have a question, and then we'll sort of come to you and go through the question. Otherwise, the next best way of taking part is through the chat facility. Now, if you look on the control panel on the right hand side, right down the bottom of the control panel, there's a box called chat, and you can ask Paul and myself a question there, and we'll sort of pick that up as we go through the webinar. We are recording this, and it will be made available later on to people who've attended. So that's that. Oh, one more thing before I hand over to Paul, I'll just give him a quick introduction. Paul's a social media guru. You can find him on Twitter at WatfordGap. He does a lot of social media surgeries, has a lot of expertise. He's been helping community groups with their social media for a long time. He's got a lot of stuff to sort of get through this afternoon. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Paul. So let me just do that for you now. Take it away, Paul. If you can just show your screen now, please.
Okay. Okay. Can people see? Should be a picture of the world on there. Is that right, Miles? Can you see that?
Yep, that's good.
You can. Excellent stuff. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. As Miles said, my name is Paul Webster. I'm not quite sure about the guru bit, but I guess I do use a bit of social media, so I guess that does qualify me for that. What we're going to do this afternoon is go through a little bit of background to social media, but mainly what I want to focus on, and that's the title of the webinar, was around some sort of top tips or some top areas that you can go away and think about, areas where you can use social media better in your organisation based on these 10 areas of ideas that I've sort of picked up over the time that I've been using social media. And I know everybody will be at different levels of knowledge and understanding and use of social media in your organisation. And I think we've got a question, Miles, coming up later on where we can find out a little bit more about that and where people are, so there's various ways that you can take part.
Absolutely.
But hopefully there'll be something anyway in what we're talking about this afternoon that will be relevant to you, whatever level of the journey you're on. So just a bit of background, social media there, that title slide there. It's online media, so don't think of social media as being something that you have to sort of completely relearn or start again from scratch from all those years of the wonderful work that you've been doing in your organisations. It's not a completely different way of doing things, it's just the conversations that you've always had, that you've been doing face-to-face, traditionally sort of in groups and networking. You can now do all of those things online. So it's a way that media and news and information can travel around through the online world. And for some people, that might be, okay, so it's just moving on slowly to the next slide. There, we haven't got that. For some people, that might be sort of your picture of social media, the sort of the way of working, good old-fashioned desk, and all of the sort of examples around there, all of those sort of components of your life, your way of being social. There's a social media website for all of them. Particularly like the YouTube example there. The best YouTube videos are just sort of glancing out of the window. Looking out the window here, it's a bit grey, but YouTube sort of the equivalent there of the real world. You've probably seen this one on if you've booked the webinar through Eventbrite. That might be your social media, or this might be where you are with social media. And I always like anything that's to do with sort of explaining things simply through cake or donuts or tea or anything like that. And this is a good example I picked up of how the different social media websites all sort of equate to types of ways of eating donuts. Just leave that up there for a couple of minutes, just to give you a sort of a flavour, if that's the right word, of the different media styles. So Twitter is a very sort of short, snappy, this is what I'm doing. Facebook's a little bit longer, or you like something on there. Foursquare, which is a website for places and checking in, is about sort of where you're doing that. So you can see that there are sort of parallels between a lot of what we do and a lot of life with how social media works. The sort of the size and the scale and importance of social media. Some people do say to me, well, it's something that's not relevant for us, or it's not something that's going to impact on what we're doing. But actually, it is large. As it says there, Facebook is a country with the third most populated. That's just sort of going on the numbers of people that are using these websites. So it is something that is very important and very necessary and part of life. Just sort of bringing those sort of big numbers from that screen really down to how things are in the UK at the moment, and these are figures from 2014, from this year. And again, lots of numbers there. We can give you these slides afterwards so you can sort of digest all of this information and use the numbers and everything. But really just to sort of pick out some of those that of the time spent on the internet, 64% of all the time spent on the internet in the UK is on some social media website or another. So it is a sort of a huge place where people are using a lot of time, a lot of communications, a lot of networking and collaboration and sharing going on there. Facebook is the biggest of all the social media websites. Of the active internet users in the UK, 31.5 million of them have got a Facebook account. So there's a good chance that if you're sharing information about what your charity or organisation is doing, then there will be people that you can share that with on Facebook, and get people to like what you're doing, get people to communicate and talk to you about what it is that you're doing. So it's about picking the right one for you, not necessarily saying that every organisation has to go into every single one and set up an account on them all, but it's important to find out what works for you, and we'll come on to an example of that in a minute. Okay. You might not think that that you are or your organisation uses social media. Like I say, we don't really know where everybody is at their sort of the level of sort of journey through the social world. But actually, I put this one up here just to say actually everybody already is famous. There's a good chance that whatever the work is that you're doing in your community, the campaign, the cause that you're interested in, the charity that you manage, or the charity that you're volunteer for, there may be somebody already talking about your work on social media. It might not be an account that you've set up or a Facebook page that you've set up, But if you've run an event at a community centre or you've delivered some sort of service, then there could be somebody that's gone away from that and gone onto their Facebook page and said, I went to a really good event down at the local community centre last week. They know how to look after you. They've got great facilities. And that, although it will have gone out onto their Facebook page, it could be that they've mentioned you. So actually you may already be famous and you may already have good feedback out there that that people are sharing with each other, people are passing a word around. So it's important to be in those spaces as well and to be listening, to keep your eyes, your ears open, to keep your social media channels active, and we'll look at that in a minute, so that you can be aware of what people are saying and people can find out what's happening. So it's not something to ignore. So where are people now? How healthy is your social media, and what sort of social media websites are you using? Hopefully I can pass back over to Miles now, who is going to do something very clever and pop something up on the screen.
Right.
Right,
Yep. We're going to do a quick Vox Pops. We're just going to ask you to vote accordingly. Which social media channels are you currently using? So there are your choices, so please vote away to all of or any that apply to you. So we're just trying to get a feel for what channels people use in their charity. Here we go. And there are the results. So 7% of you said you're not using any of these social media channels at the moment, but rather surprisingly, sort of Facebook sort of gets the 76%. I find that really surprising, because I mean this is about charities rather than sort of personal use, but if that's where your audience is, then that's where you need to be as well. A lot of votes for Twitter, in YouTube just down on 10%. Sorry, Paul, go on.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, Twitter, my favourite one out of social media websites.
And nearly a quarter using LinkedIn as well. Which we find pleasantly surprising.
Yeah, no, some really great conversations on LinkedIn. It's a really good place to have sort of specialist discussions. Okay. Right,
back to the show.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much. Very useful information. That. Thank you. We'll factor that in as we're going along. Okay. So. The right slide. Okay. The one, yeah, that's good. Okay, so what I want to do now for the sort of the bulk of this afternoon's session, for the next sort of 20 minutes, half an hour really, is to go through 10 top tips, 10 areas of social media to just sort of expand a little bit on with you, just to explain a little bit more about how each of these can be of use to you in your organisation and things to consider. So rather than thinking about so each of the social media websites directly, what I want to do is sort of look at it more from sort of 10 things that you do, 10 functions, 10 ways to approach social media to help you to do it better. And what I'm going to do is just do a sort of a quick introduction, and then some points to think about, to note down, or to remember to look at later on when you get the slides, and then an example of how that is being used by an organisation already. So if that all makes sense. So first of all, just to start with, thinking about your social media presence as being spokes around a central hub. So if you If you think about, and that's got Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus there at the centre, but I'd also add in your organisation's main website. That's the place where you can, you've got more control over it. So Facebook, Twitter, and all the social media websites, you are a little bit sort of reliant on how they look, and they do change from time to time. Hopefully not drastically, but the companies behind them do change things. So think of them as being sort of spokes out of that central hub where people can leave their comments. You can have very social conversations. You can easily hook people into those places. But then if they all signpost back to that central hub, that's the place where you can control, where you can put your branding, your message, and sort of engage with people and talk to people about what it is that you're doing. Yeah. Okay. Ooh. There. Jumped. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, making that sort of a central eye-catching point. A place where people can come to. It's important to get all the other places right, so make sure that your Facebook and your Twitter pages are all accurate and have got good information about what it is that you're doing, but link people back to that central place. An example here is the Cola Life website, which is a charity and organisation that I've sort of got interest in from the past, and I've been very interested to sort of follow the way that the things that they're doing, and just sort of pointing out here, and this is a WordPress-based website. So WordPress, which is a free website platform, very easy to get started and get used to build a website on that. But as well as the sort of the central information on there, you can see that although those spokes, you think of them sort of radiating out from the central website, what they've actually done here is embedded some of that content onto the website. So in the top right-hand corner there is a YouTube video that's been embedded. You can watch that YouTube video on there, or you can go off to YouTube to do it. And then down the bottom is Facebook. So it's a way of bringing all of that information together into a single central place. Moving on to number 2 now.
Paul, quick question for you.
Yeah.
Is it still a good idea to use social media, even if we cater for over 60s?
Absolutely. There will be maybe less people than sort of working with younger people, but particularly thinking of sort of Facebook users, and also one of the stats I saw recently was around tablet devices. One of the largest groups of people that are buying iPads and tablet PCs at the moment are people in the over 65 age range.
Yeah, I think if you look on the Ofcom website, there's a report from around about April 2014 which says that, yeah, sort of internet use and take-up of tablet devices is increasingly being driven by older people.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say yes, definitely. It is something that you would need to sort of approach perhaps differently. But I certainly wouldn't discount that as being an area to not sort of go into. Have a look at people like Age UK. Have got some really good resources. Digital Unite, digitalunite.org.uk, and we can share the link with them to them at the end. They've got some really good fact sheets and guides for working with the over 60s. Okay, so looking at planning your social media use. Don't just dive straight into it. It's probably the first thing to say. It's important to know a bit about what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, how you're going to make the most of social media, or else you won't know what you've achieved when you get there, really. So know what your objectives are, know who your audience are. So it could be, back to that example there, if you're working with the over 60s, then do you know where your audience are? Do they use any form of social media? Have they got computers? Have they got perhaps relatives, grandchildren, people like that want to communicate with them, maybe through Skype or through Facebook. So if the audience want to use social media, then it's important to sort of build that into it. Having a good story, it's important to have a good story, and we'll look at that in a second. And then choosing what the right tool is, and the right tool that matches the audience that you're working with. Not all of them are most suitable or the most suitable for the people that you're working with, so it's important to pick the right ones. And then to sustain that conversation afterwards. So once you've got started, carry things on, keep going back in and checking what people are talking about. And that summary there has come from Idealware, and again we can share that link with you at the end. Idealware do a really good social media planning workbook, which you can download and you can fill in as like a sort of an exercise example with staff, with trustees, with managers. It's a really good planning tool for the use of social media. Just a very quick example here of how that was done on the this is the Healthwatch Torbay website, where they thought about, for anybody who knows about Healthwatch or has been involved in that, they are sort of independent champions for local health and social care. So Healthwatch Torbay looked at who their audience were, and it's all about feedback. It's all about the people that use the services in the local area having a voice, having a way to get that back into the sort of the work and the championing of the organisation. So that's all around knowing who the audience are, and then using the tools that people are familiar with. So they've got Twitter, for example, on the right hand side. Twitter as being a way that they're members of the public, the people that they're working with and supporting, can leave comments and feedback through Twitter. Number 3 is about telling a good story. So every organisation has got a story. Everybody, whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's working with older people, younger people, campaigning for a cause, or a community project, community centre, everyone's got a story that they can tell. So it's important to sort of build that picture, to think about having a beginning, a middle and end. That's what they always say, makes up a good story. But something that's interesting and something that's captivating. Doesn't have to be sort of, I would say, don't need to tell the old story. So although we've all done great work in the past, it's always good to remind people about that. Making it something that's real and current and live, and that people can really feel that they connect with. And also to put on there about remembering that your organisation is also part of the story. So it doesn't have to be sort of disconnected from what you're doing. It could actually be the work that we're doing here every day is our story. Tell that, people like to read about that. An example I've got on here, just to sort of briefly go through this one, people may already know about the Never Seconds blog. It's still ongoing, but sort of over the past year or so, Martha Payne, schoolgirl in Scotland, set up a blog as part of her school project on the Blogspot blog platform, which is again another free website, so it didn't cost anything to do. Set up a blog about her school dinners, took pictures of them every day, and posted them onto her blog, and it got a little bit of interest, nothing sort of major, until the sort of the I suppose the message behind it was actually my school dinners aren't the best in the world. They're not sort of wonderful. The local school, sort of local education authority got to hear about this and weren't too happy about it. So things were done to try and sort of stop that blog from being published, which generated more interest on social media and Twitter, and the word sort of got out then that this was happening, which attracted more interest to the blog, attracted worldwide interest even, and people were then sending in pictures of their school dinners from around the world. You can see in the bottom corner there, Jamie Oliver got involved in it, and people wanted to then sort of donate, and it became more of a sort of a campaign around a cause rather than just a diary of school dinners. So Martha partnered up with a project called Mary's Meals in Africa, which builds canteens in schools. And as you can see on the next slide, that sort of developed into quite a big undertaking, quite a big project, with phenomenal amounts of money really being raised from sort of small beginnings, and the blog being very successful and lots of people being fed. So really the message of this slide is to say that not everyone's going to be as successful with their story as that, although there are other examples out there where similar things have happened. But if you've got a captivating story, if your organisation can tell something that is either different or unusual, or just something that grabs the attention of the local community, of people that read blogs and people that are on Twitter and social media, then you've got more chance of being successful and it raising the profile of what you're doing.
Paul,
so
can I just
think about what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, can I just echo that, because having worked for a funder that granted around about 17 million a year, we loved a good story, because that's what separates you from the crowd. You know, we're all doing really good work out there, but the people who could tell their story and do it well, even if it was only like a 2-minute video, a 3-minute slideshow, something like that, it got attention. Funders don't like sort of big chunky reports and annual reports, glossy handouts. They like a good story. They want to see, you know, what difference their funding makes. And having a simple story, that can really help you sort of get noticed and get attention.
Yeah. Okay. So, on to the next one. Thinking about the way that social media websites are a conversation, which is sort of what I said at the beginning, that it's no longer, when you're using social media, it's no longer a sort of a one-way street. It's no longer just you talking about what it is that you're doing. It's around building relationships, building conversations, connecting with people and sharing. For some organisations, people that I know, people I've worked for before, one of the hardest things that they can do is to share all their good ideas and to not quite give them away, but to be open and to share the report, share the documents, the fact sheets that they've done for the good of the community. It can be quite hard to do that. But if you are open and you share and you connect with people, you answer questions on Twitter, you add your little bit to the jigsaw, because we've all got our own part of this jigsaw. If we all build together, then we can build a bigger picture. You will be surprised. I didn't quite believe this at first, but you will be surprised by how much people give back to you. If you're seen on, say for example, on Twitter as being somebody who openly shares what it is that you know, then when it comes to you asking a question for a report that you're doing, or perhaps a funding bid that you're writing and you want a bit of evidence, or you want to know somebody who's done something similar before, when you ask the question, then you'll find that those people will share back. And it's a worldwide community as well, so you just never quite know who's out there, who has got that piece of information that they can share with you. Also, just to say about it not being a broadcast, it's important to sort of be in there as the conversation's happening as well, and to reply back in sort of a timely way. So just sort of thinking about if you're having a conversation with somebody face to face in the street or something like that, if you then sort of reply back 3 days later with an answer to a question that they were asking before, it might seem a little bit odd. Similar sort of thing on Twitter, really. Try and reply back as you can. Somebody said to me recently that the average life of a tweet is just 18 minutes. It doesn't sort of completely disappear off the face of the earth after that, but after 18 minutes that conversation is sort of effectively gone. The world's moved on to something else now. So think about sort of, particularly Twitter, how short the timescale is on things. Quick example here of a conversation that I had on Twitter earlier on this year, talking about using social media. I'm from Mansfield, up in Nottinghamshire, so I was talking to other people in the area about social media and wanting to run a social media surgery. And Mansfield CVS there, you can see they came in and said that they'd definitely be interested. And as a result of this sort of conversation, this exchange over no more than a few minutes on Twitter one evening, they said that they'd be interested, I said they'd be interested, and as a result of that we now run a regular, every couple of months, run a social media drop-in surgery at Mansfield CVS. And that's just sort of from conversations, passing, people connecting with each other on Twitter. It's a great way to do that. Next one is thinking about mobile, and for anybody who hasn't sort of considered mobile as part of their social media planning, their social media strategy, then I would sort of urge you to think about the use of mobile devices, handheld devices, mobile phones, smartphones as you call them, tablet devices, as being a very important way that people are going to connect with you, and that you can use your social media with them. I like this one just because it sort of really does sort of bring home how that sort of smartphone that we've got. Somebody said that I think we're all 96% of us are never more than three meters away from our mobile phone. And I can see mine over there. So if it's anything like you, then we all sort of carry these devices around with us all the time. All the things on the left-hand side of that picture there that you would have had just to do the things that you can now do with that very powerful and very affordable device. The Tesco Huddle there is £80. The new one's just come out, which is just sort of over 100. Smartphones, really quite good smartphones now, not necessarily iPhones, smartphones and Android smartphones are now available for sort of around about £100, less than £100 mark. So we can all do all of those wonderful things, all those devices from our handheld device. And again, just to sort of to emphasise how important it is to think about using social media, so using mobile devices. Many of the social media websites now are predominantly used from a mobile interface. So you can see on there sort of varying degrees. Instagram, the very popular photo sharing and photo blogging, I suppose, website. 98% of users of Instagram are on mobile devices. Vine, which is a video sharing one, even less proportion of people using desktop. And then some of the other ones like Facebook and Twitter, there's still sort of not sort of obviously you can see neither of them are predominantly desktop based. There's still sort of mobile platforms. So think about that if you're using any of these social media websites. Think about mobile access.
Sorry, Paul, can I just add to that?
Yep, one question. Yep.
If people are thinking about redoing their website, then they really need to think about making it accessible to mobile devices.
Down the bottom of that slide there, yes, that's the one.
Yeah, which is how a lot, people are increasingly sort of viewing websites. People are choosing not to have landlines, or maybe you're working with sort of communities who sort of don't have access to broadband at home or whatnot, and their way of accessing the internet is via a mobile device. So make your website accessible. It's something we'll be covering in a website in a webinar next sort of February. So look out for that when we announce a date. Okay.
Plug into that one there,
Yep.
Yeah, responsive design. If you hear that buzzword mentioned, responsive design is the way that websites adapt to the device that they're being viewed on. It's something to consider. Interesting one at the top there, just another sort of factoid to throw into the afternoon there, the second point down, that using a mobile phone to make a phone call is actually the fifth most popular activity that people use their smartphones for now. Yeah, that sort of surprised me a little bit when I first saw that one. Texting is number one, followed by using Facebook, and and checking the news and an email. So yeah, making a phone call is not something that we do with something called a mobile phone anymore for some people. So just that little one to throw in there. And it is something that people do first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Many people will sort of use the mobile phone as a way to put their alarm on there, to set their alarm. As you're setting your alarm or you're switching your alarm off, the first thing you do, the last thing you do is check what's happening in the world, what's happening on social media. So if our organisations, if charities can be there, and sort of the tip from this one is to say, if you're there with your messages, with your campaigns, your fundraising drives on the smartphone, so that when people wake up in the morning, switch their alarm off, first thing they do is see some news stories or some feeds about the work that your charity is doing, then it's another way to immediately sort of be connecting with people. It's not something that you have to just do between 9 and 5 from the office any longer. Thinking about what the best media is. A bit slow. Thinking about what the best media is for the audience that you're working with is very important as well. It's not necessarily, people do talk about video and YouTube and some sort of phenomenal numbers about how much video content is uploaded. Yeah, worldwide 500 years worth of video are watched every day, which is like crazy, stupidly big numbers. But there is just so much video content out there. But it's not necessarily always the right thing for everybody. One of the most engaging podcasts, which is sort of an audio recording, the most captivating ones I've ever heard, was from an organisation that we know who were recording sound clips of groups of children sort of going on sort of like families going away on sort of respite breaks, and it was audio clips of them, the sort of the journey to the seaside resort, of them being in the caravan, of them going on the beach, and it was just a sort of an audio recording, but it painted such a powerful picture in your head that video sometimes can't do. So although there is a sort of a big push and everybody says, oh, video is the way forward and it's fantastic and everything, and yes, it is, it's just great things. Don't sort of discount the audio recordings, the podcasts, just sitting down with perhaps an older person in the community, sitting down with a mobile phone, which we've seen from the previous slide you can do, switching it on and just doing a recording on SoundCloud, for example. There is a great website, free website for making audio recordings. Just sitting down and doing like a one-to-one interview, getting them to remember their memories of the community where they grew up, and making that as an audio recording. Some people prefer that, some people don't like having a camera sort of set in front of them. I'm not particularly a big fan of cameras. I'd much rather sort of talk to people. So it's important to talk to the audience, talk to the people that you want to involve in your project, the people that you want to make put on social media, and find out what the best way is for them.
Yeah, Paul, I guess the other point there is it's about understanding your audience.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's where your audience are, is where you need to be, and depending on who your audience are, there are different tools, to sort of to connect with them. If you're working with younger people, community groups, then maybe Facebook is your way in. If you're talking to like-minded people or policy people, funders, then it may well be Twitter, and so on and so on. And we'll come back to this later, but check out the Idealware Social Media Decision-Making Guide, which actually walks you through all sorts of useful exercises in how to identify your audience, what's the right way in, key messages, and so on and so on.
Okay, up on the screen now there should be just a couple of examples there of different sort of social media platforms that all use audio and video that you can try out. So working quickly around there, Pinterest, photo sharing, great websites being used there by Dogs Trust as a way to show success stories, to show dogs that need rehoming, their fundraising activities, all done through the medium of pictures and sort of adverts and little sort of graphics there. Over in the other bottom corner there, another picture that's on Instagram, and that's Oxfam using Instagram as a way of putting out their campaigning messages and their donation messages. The other two, SoundCloud at the top there, top right hand corner, SoundCloud is the audio recording website where you can make free podcasts, free audio recordings. And then, excuse me, down in the left-hand corner, Vine, which is at first I thought it was a bit of a quirky little odd website. Vine is sort of, I suppose, the video equivalent of a tweet. Vines are only 6 seconds long, and what they do is they just loop round and round on the Vine website. So you make a Vine, in this case here, this is Diabetes UK, using Vine to put up thank you messages to some of their supporters and their fundraisers. And that just loops round and round on the Vine website. You can embed Vine within your website, or you can just watch it on there or share it on Twitter. So it's just simple, quick, bite-sized thank you messages in this case, but you can use it in other creative ways. Okay. Next tip is being curious on Twitter. Not as I don't mean sort of being curious in a strange way. What I'm meaning here is being curious in a sort of a inquisitive way. So using Twitter as your sort of research tool. As I've said already, I'm a big fan of Twitter. I find it really good to be able to, as it says there, to sort of be a detective. So looking at who the people are that are talking about the things that I'm interested in, looking at organisations that are doing similar sort of work to what Miles and I are doing on Connecting Care, and talking to them, getting involved in their conversations, seeing what we can do to help them, seeing how they've got resources that we can help with, or that we can share, that we can add to our collection, and we can share with you and people that are interested in what we're doing. Be bold, so don't sort of think that well, that's the chief exec of an organisation, I can't possibly ever speak to him on Twitter. Generally what you'll find is most people are very sort of open, everybody sort of at the same level. Everybody views Twitter as being something that they can all share equally with on sort of a common footing. So whoever it is on Twitter, it's more about, sort of the tip from this one, is more about the message and what's being said than about the person who's saying it. So look at the words rather than the tweeter, for example. Connecting and sharing, yes, I've sort of mentioned that one earlier on, and yeah, making sure that your biography, your sort of summary page on the top of Twitter for people who use Twitter. I think Miles said that there were some of you are already using Twitter. Making sure that you've got a good profile set up, that it is your shop window, so make sure it does describe exactly what it is that you're doing as an organisation. And thinking about lists and hashtags as ways to create your content. I could sort of talk all afternoon about Twitter, but save that one for another webinar probably. But how lists can be useful as a way of curating just a smaller group of people that are talking about the same sort of things. And hashtags as a way of filtering out some of the things that you're not interested in. Just a quick example here of how Alzheimer's Society are using Twitter. So that sort of area at the top of your Twitter page, which if you all go back and check your Twitter accounts after this is finished, you can use that area as a picture if you wanted to, or it just comes as sort of a default as a blank area, or you can use it as a way to get your messages out there. This example here is Alzheimer's Society talking about Dementia Awareness Week, so they were putting out their key campaigning messages and a link to where to follow them and to find out more about what it is they're doing.
Paul,
and
quick question for you.
Side, just make sure that area is complete. Yes?
Yeah. Could you just talk a bit more about Twitter lists? Because sort of we use them to, I suppose, organise Twitter content into like different categories or interest areas, things like that. So if you have an interest in social care, for example, you might want to organise people talking about that, into a Twitter feed. Can you just sort of walk us through that a bit more?
Yeah. Okay, so if you follow quite a lot of people, or if you're following sort of a diverse different groups of people, so it may be, I mean, I'm involved with social care and charity using technology in social care, but I'm also interested in Councils for Voluntary Service, for CVS and their work, for volunteer centres. I'm also interested in digital inclusion and a whole sort of range of different connected but sort of slightly different topics. So what I've done on Twitter is the people that are talking about each of those different areas, I've organised them into Twitter lists, which is a feature of the Twitter website. And what you can do is you can put those Twitter accounts into lists, and then if you haven't got time to search through all of your, say if you've been out to a meeting or something, you come back to Twitter and it says there's 423 tweets that have gone through in the last sort of 3 or 4 hours, and you think, well, I can't possibly go through all of those and find out what's happening. So what you can do is you can just go to the list that you're perhaps most interested in, so it might be digital inclusion today. So I'll just look down those people that have been talking about digital inclusion, those people that I've put into that list, rather than having to look through all the people that we're talking about, older people using the internet, what was on Strictly Come Dancing at the weekend. No, so I haven't got that list set up, honestly. And sort of, you know, picking out the lists that that are of most interest to you for a quick sort of catch-up. So yes, just a question there, what a list for? It's a way of managing your time, a way of managing the people that you follow on Twitter in a more sort of accessible, easier way than looking through the big sort of feed of all tweets. Hashtags do a similar sort of thing. What that does is you can pull out the people that are talking about a particular topic. So there was the National Care Forum have run their annual conference over the past 2 days. Had a hashtag for that. I was following that on Twitter just to sort of see where, when tweets were mentioned with that particular hashtag in, to see what sort of content, what people were talking about at the event there. You can see on that screen there, Dementia Awareness Week had a hashtag of #DAW2014, and that would mean that if you did a search for that word, then you would just get the people that were talking about Dementia Awareness Week and not other things. So it's a way of narrowing down.
Yeah, and you can do that directly inside Twitter.
To answer them, yep.
Yeah, so yeah,
you can
thanks
do it
for
in
answering.
Twitter, yes. Yeah, or you can use one of the Twitter clients. Again, so Twitter is quite a big area. Websites like Hootsuite and TweetDeck are 2 good websites that you can also use to manage.
Yeah, so lists and hashtags are just nice, easy, convenient ways of organising content that's relevant to you. I'm just conscious of the time, Paul.
Yeah.
So
yep.
you know, and building in.
Not far off now.
Yep.
Yeah.
The end is in sight.
Okay. People can carry on. Behaviour. So, like that one at the top about not putting anything on social media that you'd not want your mother to read, or you'd not want to be on the front of the local newspaper. It's very important to sort of just think about what it is that you're saying on social media, because remembering that these accounts, these websites will be there forever. So anything that you're putting out onto social media, it does have the potential for being searched. It is open, which in some ways is a good way, because it means that people are a lot more honest and a lot more sort of thoughtful about what they're saying before they say it, in theory anyway. Making sure that as an organisation, sort of the tip from this one is thinking as a whole organisation, make sure everybody uses social media and everybody understands it, from sort of the volunteers and the staff, trusting them to be active on social media. So, for example, I heard last week, you trust your clinicians or your medical professionals to meet with people, to attend events, to talk to people at the bedside and all of that, and to be professional about it. So why do you assume that they're going to go off and watch videos of dogs on skateboards on YouTube if you gave them access to that? There's many medical professionals that like YouTube and use YouTube as a learning resource, as a way to find out what their peers are doing, what their colleagues are doing. So don't always assume that people are going to sort of do things that are sort of less savvy on there. Yeah, giving managers the power, empowering them to be able to talk about the organisation, to lead from the front, to show that their organisations are the ones that do know how to use it. There was, if anybody's got time to check it out afterwards, if you have a look in The Guardian, there was the top 30 CEOs on Twitter. Was a report that came out last week. My good friend Zoe Amar wrote that. Have a look for that one, or we can share the link with you to that one afterwards. It just gives some good top tips for how CEOs of organisations, of charities, can use Twitter. And it also gives boards and trustees the confidence that the organisation is being well represented. Again, it's important that the whole organisation knows that it's on social media and knows how it's using it.
Paul, quick question for you.
Okay.
Do you recommend a social media policy or anything like that, sort of guidelines?
That is quite bizarre, because the next slide,
as if by magic,
as if by magic, as they said. If you have a look at the TNT, and this is a public document, it's under sort of a Creative Commons license, which means that anyone can share it as long as you give some appropriate credit back to TNT. And what they've done is they've done a very simple, in this case it's 2-page social media guidelines and policy around the things that you should do and you shouldn't do, and what happens if you see your organisation being mentioned on Twitter, how you should react. Really good, simple guides. It's all about trusting staff and giving them empowering them to talk on social media, not to restrict things, or like one organisation that I once knew, where every tweet had to be signed off by the chief exec before it was allowed to be tweeted. And if you can imagine that the average life of a tweet is 18 minutes, then pretty much everything that organisation was saying was irrelevant by the time authorisation had been given. Maybe an extreme example, that one, but it's more about trusting the staff to talk online and to talk positively about what it is that you're doing. By following certain sort of set guidelines, and for everybody to sort of adhere to those and to know that those are the guidelines. And if you do stray outside of that, and if you do start talking about sort of going out and having a wild partying time on the company account, then you do run the risk of that being sort of pulled up. There are still sort of professional levels of what you can and can't say on the company account and on your personal one. So hopefully that answers the question about guidelines. Okay, nearly there. Choosing the right time to tweet is also important, or the right time to use social media, and just having a bit of a plan about your time. Having a posting schedule is important. So it's so the tip from this one, the summary from this one, is to think about what it is that you want to say every day, every week, and every month. And it may be that sort of daily you want to sort of, as it says there, the sort of the paragraph underneath that one is every day you go in and you check what people are saying, you reply, you check your new followers, monitor any lists and hashtags, put things onto Facebook, put out like a post, an update onto Facebook about the latest work that you're doing. And then you would sort of think about weekly, when you've got a little bit more time, perhaps once a week at the end of the week, put up a new blog post, something that might take a couple of hours to do, or an hour or so, just a summary of what the organisation's been doing, the progress on that fundraising campaign. Put that up every week, and then perhaps once a month put something a bit longer, maybe a video, maybe an audio recording, maybe a new guide or a document or something like that that you can share, and do that on a sort of a monthly basis, so that you're pacing yourself throughout the month of the activities that you're doing and you're putting out onto social media. But the important thing is that the last point down the bottom there is that social media is 24/7, it is worldwide. Particularly, I don't know anybody who follows anybody who's not based in the UK. When you wake up in the morning and you're sort of looking at Twitter first thing in the morning, you'll get a lot of sort of posts from people in America who have been talking about the things that you're interested in overnight. So whilst I don't sort of advocate that people wake up in the middle of the night to reply back to people, it is important to sort of not to think, well, I've done my post for the day, or I've done my post for the month, I'm just going to walk away from Twitter and social media, and I'm not going to go back on Facebook until sort of next month or something like that. It's important that if you are mentioned, if your organisation or the hashtag that you're following or your organisation name is mentioned, that you can go back in fairly, not immediately, but within a short space of time to go back in and reply and answer to that person's question if you get mentioned. So don't sort of think that once you've done it, you can sort of leave it. Okay.
Your last tip.
And the last tip is about monitoring and evaluating. So we've talked about all of these things to do with setting up social media and how to use it. But it's also very important to have the time to set aside some time to go in and monitor what it is that you're doing. And there's just some examples there of websites that can be used. And this is sort of, if I have one sort of overall tip from the whole of this sort of webinar, it's around building relationships, and that's much more important than the numbers. So having those collaborations, having that trusted circle of friends on Facebook, or that group of people on Facebook, or that network on LinkedIn that you know will have the answers. It's much more important to have those small groups of people than it is to have 425,000 followers or whatever it might be that some celebrities seem to have, because they can't possibly reply to all of those people. Some of the websites there that you can use, and again these are all either free or there's free versions of them. I think looking at those, actually they're all free. Twitter Analytics particularly is a good one that's now public and open to anybody, not just to businesses, where you can have a look at your sort of the success, if that's the right word, of your tweets. You can see whether people have clicked on them and people that have replied and shared them. Facebook have got Insights, which is a similar sort of thing, and WordPress blog post statistics. The Hootsuite Grader app, which is worth you having a quick play with if Twitter is your thing. It just gives you like a summary of how good your Twitter account is, how well it's performing at the moment. So yes, it's an extra pair of eyes and ears for your organisation. Social media does do a lot of that sort of work for you. It does make it a lot easier for you to be able to keep in touch with what's happening out there. Okay. Oh yes, it's not about the numbers. Never forget that one. I keep putting that one on there. It's not about the numbers. So before we just open it out to any questions that people have got and answering to a couple of the questions that have come through, just a quick summary to say, don't hide from social media. Other people aren't. More and more people are using it now, so don't sort of think, well, it's something that we'll put off until the next sort of trustees meeting, or we'll talk about this within 6 months' time. Don't look at it as being something different. So it's not you. It's not about you having to do everything completely different. You can still tell the same stories. You can still campaign in the same way, just that you've got a lot more capacity, a lot more tools now used to be able to do it. Be visible online and have an accurate profile. I hope, well, if you've got a Twitter account, then make sure you sort of move past the stage of having that picture of the egg and the background colour. Put something on there that says who you are, so that when people find you, they can connect with you, they can ask you questions, they can join in and help you and support you. Be open, and remember that it's social media, it's not selling media. That those sort of the people who go onto Twitter or Facebook and start sort of pushing what it is that they're doing in a sort of an aggressive way soon get sort of found out and not quite ignored. But remember, it's social and it's a conversation. And trust staff. And trust staff to speak positively about what it is that you're doing. They're working for you, they're volunteering for you, they're part of your organisation, so trust them to talk about what it is that they're doing in a good way. And respond and say thank you. No. That's sort of where I am. We've got some extra slides on here, which again we'll share all these with you, which are some links to resources, websites, the Connecting Care websites, and places like that where you can follow up and read lots more about what it is that we've been talking about this afternoon. But I think now
let's take some questions.
Along to that one there. we can take some questions. Yeah.
Paul, thank you very much. A wealth of information and knowledge there. You'll be really happy to know we've got lots of really good questions for you. So first up, we got Charlotte has a couple of questions for you, which is that as a rural organisation or an organisation in a rural area, their question about social media is how do you make sure people know that you're there and they don't just sort of skate over your page? So it's about sort of keeping people's interest and whatnot. So using social media for rural organisations and whatnot, to get their message out there and keep eyeballs on their sort of web page.
Okay, answer to that one. If you go back to the point about telling a good story, I think number 3, it's important that if you've got a good story, and that can apply to anybody. And I know that's sort of a bit of a not quite sort of brushing it off, but if your organisation is saying good things about what you're doing, doesn't matter whether you're in a rural community, whether you're in the middle of London, if you're doing good things, people will stop and read that page. If you've got a really eye-catching video on there of some work that you've done with an older person or in the community, or an event that's taken place, and that makes people stop when they get to the website and think, wow, this organisation is doing good things, then that will encourage people to stay. The other sort of angle to that, which is also very important to think about, is the way that you promote what it is that you're doing. And yes, for a rural organisation that might not have as many of the sort of the networking opportunities, it is harder to tell people that you're actually, that our website's even out there. So that's where you do have to use things like Twitter and Facebook. You can, by following, say, other rural organisations. I know, I'm not quite sure where you are, Charlotte, but I know Rural Action Yorkshire, who are sort of like a community council for Yorkshire. Sorry, somebody's put a question up there, I'm just flipping back. They're really active on Twitter, and they post a lot of content out there about what they're doing in their rural community. So again, that's another way of using Twitter lists. Perhaps you could build a list of other rural organisations and connect with them online, even if you can't connect to them face to face. So I think also think about, so just say other ways that you can promote what it is that you're doing. If you've got a good website, you've got a good Facebook page, then put things on to the bottom of your signature, say for example on your email. Make sure that any newsletters that go out have got links to your website in them, so that people do find you that way. If you've got like flyers, just make sure that your online presence is mentioned in all the offline spaces where you meet.
Yeah, I was just going to say another part of that might be just understanding your audience and what channels they communicate through. And that comes back to the Idealware social media decision-making guide that I'm going to show people at the end. Another question for you is question that's come up quite a lot is about time and capacity, because social media doesn't appear in anyone's job description, and yet it's something a lot of us have to do. So how do you sort of fit it in sort of once it's all set up, and sort of stay on top of things?
Yeah, it's not in anybody's, or I suppose it's becoming more into people's job descriptions in some places. But it's almost like it's not in anybody's job description, but actually it's in everybody's. So back to what I was saying on, whichever one it was now, point 7 I think it was, sorry, point 8 about behaviour. It could be that managers, trustees, volunteers, if everybody is talking on social media, if everybody's mentioning the good work of the organisation, then it doesn't have to rely on one person finding the time to update all of that content. Particularly things like websites like WordPress, you can grant different people rights to be able to add new content to the page. So it doesn't have to be a silo through one particular person all the time, where one person is the good old-fashioned sort of content editor. It could be that somebody working out on a project out in the community can go on their tablet, their smartphone, and update the WordPress website whilst they're out working with somebody. Could be that they've done a video or they've got an audio recording. That content can immediately be uploaded to the website. There are things that you need to put in place, obviously, beforehand to make sure that that process is a seamless process and things don't get lost along the way. But once you've set up that flow of information, it doesn't then have to go to the one person who probably hasn't got the capacity to do that because they're busy doing other things. What you will also find, and this is one of those sort of things that nobody quite knows how long this is going to take to actually happen, but more and more of your communications are going to be done online. So, for example, there was an organisation I was working with a couple of years ago, and they still sent out a printed newsletter, which is a nice glossy A4, sort of nicely printed monthly magazine, which cost a lot of money to produce. It tied up somebody's job for a whole month just producing this thing, which was then posted out at great cost to everybody. And what they did was they cut that back, or cut it out completely, I think, now. And that person's job is now just responding to queries, putting out posts and things like that onto the website. So what you will find is some of the traditional roles of an organisation will diminish a little bit as social media becomes more prominent.
I think one of the,
that answers your question.
Yeah, one other thing to add there is back to the old Idealware social media decision-making guide, is that their rule of thumb is set aside at least 2 hours each week for every social media channel in your mix. So if you have less than 3 hours per week, their advice is to generally start with a single channel, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, your blog, YouTube, whatever that is. So that's their general rule of thumb, 2 hours for each sort of media channel. Another question for you is from William. How do we get our over 60s senior leadership to buy into a social media strategy? Where can we find relevant data to support the return on investment?
Okay.
So it's about getting trustees to buy into social media. What's it for? What value do we get out of it?
In terms of the sort of the hard, cold facts and the numbers and everything like that, yes, I'd have a look at, Miles already mentioned the Ofcom media statistics, just to, if you need any sort of hard evidence about this is how many people are now using social media in the sort of in that sort of age range. In terms of sort of actually selling it to them, you can, again, I come back to the story example again. You can't beat a good story for showing people how successful something can be. Yes, you could show people, and I know I worked for a charity a few years ago where it was a battle. I was sort of 5 or 6 years ago. I was having this battle with senior managers about what's the point of this, and you'd show them a Twitter page and they'd just look at it and say, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. What's it all about? Just people talking about what they have for breakfast, or that old myth about Twitter. But if you can sort of turn it to the things that your organisation, William's doing, the work that your charity's doing, and find some good examples of similar organisations maybe, or of people that are talking about the same sort of things that you are, and show some examples to the senior management, and see whether that helps them. Perhaps just having like an open session. I've done that before, where we'll just sort of, rather than having sort of a PowerPoint or anything fancy like this, just putting the laptop down and saying, yeah, let's just see what we can find out. Let's just have a sort of an hour's session of just looking through social media, looking through some of the websites, some of the organisations that are similar to ours, and see what they're doing, see what clever, innovative ways that they're using social media. Have they got a video on there that's interesting and that we like? Could we do a similar sort of thing to them?
I think another way of looking at it is, to answer William's question, is to look at the social media metrics. The numbers, and you've sort of flashed up a couple of slides at the end there. Hootsuite Grader, which I think Charlotte wanted to have a look at as well. So if you could just flip back to that one.
that was that one there, wasn't it? The analytics
Yeah,
tools.
because
Yeah, that one there.
sort of point 10, we were talking about what does social media success look like? You know, how do we know that this is worth doing? You know, that we're actually sort of reaching the people we want to, and some of these tools that Paul references here, Facebook Insights, Hootsuite Radar, Twitter Analytics can help us sort of figure that out. But again, you know, if you're trying to get senior management to buy into this, it's about understanding where your audience are. So that you know, people have moved on. Back in the day, you know, we would have said, well, we've got a membership of 500. You know, we send them a newsletter in the post, you know, once a month, which sort of nobody now reads. And now sort of most people consume information online. So if that's where your audience are, then that's where, you know, you need to be as well. And to give you an example of that, this event was advertised sort of solely on Twitter, and we managed to sort of get sort of 50 odd people, you know, to register for it, you know, which is great. You know, it would have taken us a lot more sort of work, you know, without something like sort of Twitter to sort of spread the word and whatnot. So for us, you know, Twitter has proven a really good way of being able to reach out to disparate communities all over the country. Last year we did a webinar for a national organisation. We were talking about sort of websites, and we only advertised it on Twitter, and we actually got people from the Highlands and Islands of Scotland sort of hearing about it and sort of joining the webinar. And for them, that was like the best way of getting sort of training and learning, because, you know, actually making that physical journey to the mainland was too expensive in terms of sort of time and cost, and being able to do that online was great for them. But they heard about it through Twitter, so it can and does sort of work in sort of rural communities. But, you know, in terms of management buy-in, I think you have to be able to show that, yeah, this is where our audience are, you know, so this is how we now need to sort of communicate with them. Okay, any more questions for Paul? If you've got a question, you can put your hand up and we'll bring you into the call, or you can type a question into the chat or the question facility. Anyone want to put their hand up and ask Paul a question? Have we covered everything that you'd like to?
I'm just scrolling back through the questions. I noticed there was one there about tweeting a list. Did someone ask a question about tweeting a list?
Yeah.
Or do all tweets go to everybody? The answer to that one, probably a little bit not complicated, but you can't just tweet a list of people. People that are following that list will see it, but no, otherwise tweets would go to everybody. So anything that you, or potentially could go to anybody. I mean, again, this is sort of more sort of the semantics of how Twitter works. If you put somebody's name in a tweet, then it goes to them, but anybody could see that tweet if they were searching for it. Which is why using hashtags or knowing that people are in certain lists is a sort of a better way of making sure that that is seen by the right people. So don't sort of think of, by sending something to a Twitter list, don't think that that means that other people won't have seen it. So one of the big mistakes of Twitter is that people do think that some things are private, or some things aren't going to be seen by everybody. Yeah, you've got to remember that Twitter is open, so don't put anything on there that you wouldn't want people to see.
But basically, it's you have to direct message people.
If you did want, yes, I mean, yeah, I always sort of skip over that one, but yeah, there is a facility to have a private message with somebody through a direct message on Twitter. But generally, most 90% or so of the conversations on Twitter are public, open conversations.
Yeah. So just to answer Juan's question, direct messages on Twitter are private.
Yes, yes, yeah. So they are. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to answer Jeanette's point, you're very kind. She says she's in the Highlands and Islands and she's working in digital inclusion. So
hello.
Glad to be of use. So
are you our furthest away listener? Probably are. I don't think we've got anybody from the sort of the other side of the Atlantic or anything like that on this one.
Well, glad you heard about us and you found this useful. So thank you, Jeanette. Any other questions before we sort of wrap up? If you have a question, ask now or put your hand up. Okay. Great. I think we'll wrap it up there. So just to conclude, I'd like to thank Paul for putting this together. Thank you very much. Loads of really useful information there. I'd just like to thank all of you for coming to this webinar this afternoon. Appreciate your time very much. Thank you for the questions as well. The session has been recorded, and the recording and the slides will be made available by the end of the week. What we'll do is we'll put the recording up on Vimeo, and we'll send the link out to you all. And we'll also make the presentation available via SlideShare, so you can sort of download that as well, because there's loads of really good stuff on there again. So once again, thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time this afternoon, and glad you found it useful.
Yep. If anybody is on Twitter and wants to ask any questions that way, then I'm Watford Gap, as in Watford and the Gap, and Miles is Master ICT. And I'm sure we could answer questions that way or signpost people to things that way as well.
Yeah. So great. Thanks again, everyone. And look out for our next webinar. We're hoping to fit one in just before Christmas, and that will be around how to engage the mainstream media. So it's following on from this, how to use social media to engage with the mainstream, like, say, The Guardian, sort of voluntary sector sort of pages and whatnot. So look out for that. And again, thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.